We have a special guest, Jay Samit, on the Never Broke Again podcast. And Jay, I didn't know anything about Jay before Andrew told me he was coming on. And then I did some research, and it seems like Jay has done a lot of different things. And it was very interesting to me. So I'm very excited for him to share everything that he's accumulated over his lifetime to ensure that he'll never go broke again. So happy to have you on here, Jay. And
Thanks
you got
for
Andrew,
having me.
and this will be a piece of cake. So with that, I saw that you did something with like CDs or laser discs. And were laser discs like those big CDs that they used to have for movies? Those big, huge ones that were like records. Like, was that where your start was, or was that your big breakthrough? I didn't really understand that when I was looking you up online.
So I talk about it in Disrupt You, my first book. I was the first guy to put video on a computer, and I thought a TV and a computer would merge together and become one. I didn't know it would take 30 years. So the evolutions of different technologies, the Laserdisc was big 12-inch giant things. Later, digital video onto a computer, video for Windows, for Microsoft. And with each one of those, you come up with new businesses. And you only need two things to succeed in life: insight and perseverance. Everything else can be hired. So I teach people how to get the insight. One of the ways I've paid back for the past 10 years is I teach how to build a high-tech startup at the largest engineering school in the country. And I've had students do $100 million in a semester. So anybody can do it. And future-proofing you is the story of, I took a homeless immigrant, mentored him one day a week for a year. And spoiler alert, if you're reading it, he went from broken on welfare to self-made millionaire in under a year.
That could be very valuable. I'd be willing to pay that. Can you make me a Deca millionaire? How long would that take to make me?
First million is usually the hardest for people. The next ones are inevitable if you follow the same path. So basically what I did is I synthesized down those mentoring sessions down to what I call the 12 truths. And if you follow those 12 truths, you can live anywhere on earth and have opportunity. We're living in an era of endless innovation where, brand new startups topple 100-year-old companies seemingly overnight. And people don't understand how that happens. And so I've had the good fortune to be partnered with people and work with people like Steve Jobs and Reid Hoffman and Bill Gates and Paul Allen and all these people. And some are super, super smart, but most aren't. But they don't listen to all those naysayers that told you what you can't do. If you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And, the first truth is having that growth mindset. I've never heard a positive idea come from somebody in a negative state. And studies show, just having a positive state of mind releases dopamine, lights up the neurotransmitters across the synaptic nerves, and it will make you more likable, will make you more intelligent and close more sales. So it isn't that success makes you happy. It's that being happy creates success.
Would you say that's more important than tangible success in your bank account, is being happy? And ultimately, if you just have a positive outlook, that'll lead you to the right places or keep those bad people at bay?
Well, what I'm saying is if you don't have that positive outcome, you have zero chance of achieving success. It's not if you're walking around, hey, I'm happy. I'm not one of these hug a tree and put up a picture of Mercedes on your wish board and magically it'll happen. It takes work. Future-proofing you isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. It's how to plan out your life. I vividly remember those decades ago. You go from 7th grade to 8th, 9th to 10th, and you go to college. And one day you leave college, and what? There was no plan. And I got out of college when there was a horrible recession. And so, showing how old I am, it's like, what was interesting to me? Well, there's this movie Star Wars that came out, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. So I want to do Hollywood special effects. Couple of problems. I know no one in Hollywood. I know nothing about computers, and I know nothing about special effects. So what I did was I ran an ad in the Hollywood Reporter as if I was a studio hiring somebody. And I ran an ad for somebody in video special effects, in special effects. And I got a bunch of resumes in, and those resumes taught me two things. One, what my resume should look like to try to get one of those jobs. And two, here's a whole bunch of places that have somebody with 1 foot out their door. So it's solving problems. It's looking at how to solve solutions in a different manner. So the modern version, which I talked about in Disrupt You, a guy got that dream job out of college at one of the big ad agencies. He wanted to be in advertising. He wanted to be a madman. That was his dream. And he's like in a basement cubicle crunching numbers. I mean, he just wants to shoot himself. He's miserable. And he's Googling around. And one day he realized nobody bought the names of the 5 biggest creative directors of the 5 big agencies. So for $9, the price of a Frappuccino, he bought their names, and when they clicked on themselves, as famous people are out to do to see if there's anything bad out there, it said, hey, I want to work for you. Click here to see my portfolio. 3 of the 5 brought him in. All 3 offered him jobs. He got 5 times his salary and probably accelerated his career by $15 for a $9 investment. So back to me with the special effects. I knew nobody was going to hire a 21-year-old guy to be in charge of the special effects for their feature film. I'm not an idiot. So I made up a fake company called Jasmine, J. Allen Salmon, it was mine. And I made myself just the sales guy for the company, not the president. And I went out and hustled, and I got special effects work. And then I hired people that knew how to do it. So it's about mastering the process, not the task. I've created, at one point I had 6 of the top 10 video games in the country. I've created video games. I've created educational stuff. I've wired the nation's schools. I'm not an engineer. I haven't written a line of code. You can hire people. What you can't hire away is insight and perseverance.
So yeah, I like how you bring up insight and perseverance. I've read both your books. Awesome, amazing books. Disrupt You, Future Proofing You. Even I love the title of Future Proofing You. And the insight that you bring inside those books, I'm a big reader, and that's up there. It's a top 10 book for me, both of them. But perseverance can be taught. I feel like just do this over and over and over.
Both can be taught. Both can be taught. One of the 12 truths is turning perseverance into passion.
Right.
Anybody can sell shoes. But there's a company, Tom Shoes, that every time you buy a pair, they give a pair to somebody that's never had shoes. And just pause for a second and think how that makes customers feel, how that makes the employees feel, how it makes their investors feel, okay? And when you run into a hard time, you're not just letting yourself down. It means another kid doesn't get helped. So anytime that you can focus on something greater than the bottom line. So back to my early days when I was in my 20s, when you have a startup, and you're a kid, you have more time than you have business. So each year I would sit down with all my employees and we pick one pro bono project to do. And so the graphic artist could do their best work and the coder could do and there's no client, telling you to change or to do anything. So Ringo just had his birthday. We had one year designed the first software for non-communicative kids to be able to use a computer to communicate with their parents. I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm tired. This is back in the 90s. And Ringo Starr was so impressed with it, he volunteered to do our TV commercials for free. So when you do these things that have impact, they're like lights that attract brilliant moths. And so when I bump into people that worked for me 10, 20, 30 years ago, they don't remember, was I paid this much? Was I paid that? They remember these projects and the impact that they've had. And as you get more success, the point is to pay it forward. The purpose of life is to live a life of purpose. You want to maintain that positive attitude, solve for others to solve for yourself. Solve a problem for 5 people, you have friends. Solve for 1 million, become wealthy. Solve for 1 billion, you change history. And we're going to hit 8 billion people this year. We're one click away from 7 billion of them. You only have to be right for a nanosecond to make $1 million. It's not this great miracle, but it's not going to happen if you don't try.
How do you find these people? You found the people. How do you pay for these people when you're starting out?
Well, so let's pretend
Like when you're first starting out, because I'm assuming you don't just wake up and you have a bunch of money.
no, you don't need any money. So my last company went from zero to, in 18 months, we sold it to News Corp for $200 million. So Andrew and Joshua, I'm starting a new company. I'll give you 10% for 10,000. Okay. What do I now have? I have 10,000 in cash and 90,000 in equity. I can hire people with that stock. I can trade stuff with that stock. Entrepreneurs don't come into a world in a zero-sum game. It isn't my goal is to take your money. There's only so much money on the table, like a poker game. As you saw in that example, I just made 100,000 out of thin air. Okay. So when you see these startups that get these incredible valuations, they're creating that capital. It didn't exist without their idea.
Mm-hmm.
So in the beginning, you could partner with somebody and give them part of the company. I mean, there's always ways to do it. Now, there's a lot of ways, a lot more options to raise money nowadays. There's crowdfunding. With rewards and with equity. There's no gatekeeper stopping you from success, and there's no shortage of capital. I remember the first time I went to pitch a VC, and I've raised hundreds of millions of dollars from VCs. I was like terrified, like, oh my God, what do I do? And then somebody gave me the tip. Their sole job is to give away that money, right? They're hoping you don't say anything that makes them say no. I mean, they're taking the meeting, with the exception of one famous VC who always, and it took me about the fourth time I went to him, he always goes, I'm so sorry, I'm overscheduled today. I only have 5 minutes. That's his way of basically saying, I hate your pitch at 5 minutes, and he's out of there. If he likes it, he'll stay for the next 2 hours. But people want to create things. And the big change, since you read both of them, Andrew, that was an oversight in Disrupt You that I focused on as one of the 12 truths in the second one, is don't think you have to go it alone. Find a mentor. Don't fly solo. You will need a series of mentors for every stage of your life. Bill Gates, when he was a self-made billionaire and the richest man in the world, his mother told him to reach out to Warren Buffett because you need a mentor. And imagine being cocky in your 20s. I'm the richest man in the world. What do I need a mentor for? How to live with billions of dollars, right? There's a different set of rules. And you don't just go on LinkedIn and go, hey, Jay, will you be my mentor? That's about as successful as walking to a bar and saying, hey, you want to have my baby? Don't think it works. It's about finding people, starting a dialogue, people that are the next stage of your career. People coming to me, I haven't been at that entry level for decades. Not a lot of help. When how do we go public? One of my companies, we just went public 2 weeks ago. That I can give you a lot of advice on. But people want to help. People want to pay it forward. People want to see those solutions come to being. I don't know if you're a big Monty Python fan or Time Bandits or any of those old things, but when they decided to make feature films, nobody wanted a bunch of hippies to make a feature film. So George Harrison's reading the script and goes, I'll pay $100,000 to see this movie, right? They all just kicked in and they all made money because it was a passion project. They believed in it. And so, yeah, does every project I try to do get funded and happen? No. But you learn to embrace your mistakes, because when you fail, you don't end up where you started. You either earn or you learn, but either way, it propels you forward to success.
So your insight and perseverance, that's a common theme, Jay Samit theme. So how do you teach, or how do you learn insight? Because I guess you can learn it through reading a massive amount of books, which is how I personally obtain a lot of insight. But how else That's my
So,
opinion, but how else can you?
so in
Great.
Disrupt You, I talk about my 3 problems a day for 30 days technique. And this is what I have my students do and everybody do. Today, not tomorrow, write down 3 problems in your life. If you don't have any problems, congratulations. You have
Well, with that
life.
growth mindset, I don't have problems though. You know what I mean?
Well,
I
you're
have
going to
I
identify.
have challenges, right?
So you were in, traffic this morning or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Day 1's pretty easy. Day 2 might be pretty easy. By day 3, people are like, I don't see anymore, because we walk around with blinders on and every inconvenience we accept. So once you start getting out of that automaton mentality, so the traffic one, 3 guys just like us were sitting in traffic in Tel Aviv, and I'm from Los Angeles. Okay, Tel Aviv's got traffic, but Los Angeles, we mastered traffic. But they're sitting there and they go, wait a second. The telephone company knows where I am. They know where my phone is. They tell me to go left and the other guy to go right. There's no traffic. That was the basis for Waze. They sold it the same year for over $1 billion with 0 revenue. A reader that I've become friends with was doing the challenge and was taking his medicine one morning, and the phone rings. He takes the call, gets off the call, goes, "Oh, did I take my pill? If I didn't, I could get sick. And if I did and I take again, I could kill myself. Oh, that's a problem." And he thought about it a little bit, and then he took a little Happy Meal watch, put on the pill bottle so that every time you open it, says, "Oh, I opened it 8 hours ago," or "I opened it 3 minutes ago," called a timer cap and sold millions. So it's looking at those problems. There's a flight attendant, Sandy Stein, no academic background, but she realized she was constantly fumbling in her purse for her keys. So she made a little clasp that goes inside a purse, became a millionaire in 4 months. And my favorite of the past 2 years is a 16-year-old high school girl. Parents aren't doctors. They're not scientists. They're Joe Average. And she's doing the science fair, okay? I did the volcano with baking soda and vinegar, okay? All right, I was that, didn't take this seriously. She looks up that the 4th leading cause of death in this country is hospitals, getting an infection. And it occurs to her, why doesn't somebody make sutures that change color if the wound's affected? So she plays with some vegetables, different pH balance, make a long story short, was smart enough to go get a patent, and now it saves 100,000 lives a year. Why did no giant company come up with this? Because nobody was looking to solve a problem. I've had companies that I've run with hundreds of thousands of employees, and I can't find a one whose job is to come up with something new.
I got an idea I want to throw out there. I thought of it the other day. So, you know how you have to buy a whole car to go electric, right? How come there's not like a shop where you just drive up to it and they just convert the car to electric, so you don't have to buy a whole new one? But then I talked to some people and they're like, it costs a lot of money to do that. And that's the issue. How would you, you know what I mean?
It would cost more than converting your car.
I was told it would cost like $100,000 to convert the car from gas to electric.
Right. So it'd be cheaper to have one that was purposefully built.
Yeah. No. I'm just thinking is that it would be so much more efficient if you just, but I guess it's just too.
No, efficiency is designing something that does what it's meant to do. I've been electric since 2017. Once the batteries go to the next generation where you have 600 miles to a charge, game over.
Where's it at right now?
Depending on which manufacturer and what size car, 200 to 300, which is 90% of your driving.
Yeah.
It's like you want to go on your cross-country trip. Now, with the 600-mile battery, you'll get 85% of that charge in 15 minutes. So think of how long you're at a gas station and you go to pee, for that same amount of time, with Tesla, when I bought Teslas, you get lifetime charging for free. There's no oil changes. So on a per mile basis, your car pays for itself compared to what you're paying to operate another car.
How far out do you think this 600-mile or even 1,000-mile battery is?
They exist. So when do they become commercialized is the question. A lot of people ask me, how are you so good at predicting the future? I hang out with the people that are coding it. So I know what's coming out. And it's funny, a couple of years ago, Google called me and hired me to help them with the project. And I was like super flattered, but I had to say, I was the number 3 guy at Google. I had to say, I don't get this. When I want to know something, I just Googled, what could I possibly know that your 10,000 of the smartest engineers and 100,000 other people, don't? And it was how to bring a product to market. So there's always a place where you can add value.
So when you come up with these ideas, Jay, and you used Waze as an example, a company with no revenue sold for $1 billion, how do you bring that to market and find a way to scale that up?
So if you're solving a problem that things go viral that work, a guy made a game for his friend called Wordle, and it was so simple and so addictive and so fun that with no marketing, and it wasn't meant as a business, you got millions of people playing it and, sells it overnight. It's the person that says, I've got this new startup. Let me spend the next 45 minutes and explain to you what it does. Well, that means that there's never a customer that's going to give you 45 minutes or an investor that's going to give you 45 minutes. You've built something for which it's not solving a problem. You're searching to create a problem to solve. I used to have at my company open pitch day. Friday from 9 a.m. to noon, anybody could come in and see me. And you got some lunatics, but you got some good things that walk in. I mean, you have to be open to new ideas. And there's always new technology that can solve other things. And the advantage that the next generation, whatever that is, always has is that they don't have habits that preclude them from seeing change. When my son was getting his first apartment, we're driving around and there's a sign, oh, write down that phone number. I tell him, and he takes his phone and goes click. Right? I have the habit of writing things down. Next generation has the habit of using their phone as a reminder. Right? So when you start with that base of what exists today and you come up with a problem that isn't solved, there may be a technology coming out that solves it. I mean, I'm a huge fan and completely focused on spatial reality of what augmented glasses will do. And you will not be looking at your phone 3 years from now. It'll stay in your pocket. And the things that your glasses will be able to do are mind-blowing. You're in China, you translate the menu. You'll be able to hear 40 different languages and comprehend what people are saying. Travel the world with 2 pair. When you see the love of your life sitting across the room, put a pair on her and, communication is solved. But seriously, I mean, there's a company that's scanning all the products at retail, all the sides. So you walk into your supermarket, there's 40,000 SKUs. Your doctor just told you have high blood pressure. Show me the products that have no salt. Everything else disappears off the shelf. Show me the things that are keto or halal or kosher. So tons of problems that can be solved. And the person spending the billions creating the technology isn't the one solving the problem. So when the iPhone came out 15 years ago, here's 2 of the top 10 best-selling apps: the Fart app and a game with cats. People didn't think of OpenTable and Robinhood and all the other things that have made millions and billions of dollars. So Facebook, Microsoft, Google, Apple are all spending billions creating the infrastructure and hardware for augmented. They're not solving the individual problems. So the people that come out with those apps in the beginning strike gold. When the iPad came out, no one had swiped before. For those people that are of that generation, there was a time before swiping. And Apple wanted to explain swiping in their TV commercials. No one had ever swiped. So they searched the world for a video game that would use swiping. And they found a company that had 30 failures, was going out of business, and would say yes to anything. And it was called Angry Birds. And Apple put that in their TV commercial. And everyone saw $100 million worth of advertising. And that thing sold millions and millions, sold $5 billion worth of bed sheets, thermoses, t-shirts, and stuffed animals the first year. Okay? So there's always a way to get out to that market.
So you're saying earlier, I create a company, I find someone, give 10% for 10,000. What do you do with that 10,000? What's the next thing that you do?
Well, in most situations, you want to have your minimal viable product. You want to ship a product that is good enough to solve a problem, but don't spend time polishing the apple. Mm-hmm. My friend Reid Hoffman says entrepreneurs are people that jump off the cliff and assemble the plane on the way down. And that's really the approach. And what you'll get if you get your product out fast is you'll get free R&D. Because everybody that spent their hard-earned money will tell you why it sucks and what's missing. And other people will come up with new ideas. You also want to have, if you have enough people, you want to have hackathons, prizes for your employees to come up with out-of-the-box thinking. The like button came from a hackathon. The news feed came from a hackathon, internal hackathon at Facebook. Imagine the difference of Facebook without those two features. So you just get it in people's hands and don't go asking grandma and mom if it's a good company and a good idea. Go to the person that's trying to solve it. So at this stage of my life, I only get involved with companies that solve issues that I think really need to be solved. And one of the biggest issues is 100 years ago, some schmuck thought the best way to grow food was to put as much poison on it that would kill rodents and weeds and insects, but it would never do anything to us. Okay. And fast forward, this is really killing us and killing the planet. So how do you grow food at scale to feed 8 billion people without poisonous chemicals? And so make a long story short, Greenfield Robotics makes these little robots, think of the size of an ice chest, that go up and down row crops, soy, milo, corn, etc., and cut out the weeds. Simple as that. A swarm of them. Think of goats in a field. Now, the farmer makes 40% more money because he's growing organic. Okay. Farmer saves money by not having to have that. Farmer doesn't get cancer from handling, Roundup and these other things. The consumer doesn't get poisoned, and the runoff doesn't go down the Mississippi and kill all the fish in the Gulf of Mexico. On top of which, you now can have regenerative agriculture. So you can have not just a monocrop, you can mix crops. You can actually have more nutrition in your crops. And so healthy people, healthy planet. Why did nobody ever solve this before? Well, if you made a Venn diagram of farmers working farms and people that do robotics, they didn't overlap. So you had to put together that overlap.
So when you said you're working on projects that help a lot of people, are you only focusing on projects like you just described?
Yeah, I don't need any money. So why would I waste my time for more of it?
That's a good point.
Well, and that's a great mindset to have in general. But kind of circling back when you were 21 and you hustled, right? Because you hear this a lot from high-level entrepreneurs who hustled early on. But I think Josh was poking at, all right, you hired people, but how'd you pay them if you had no money, right? How did you?
You made them a partner. You made them part of the company.
So you gave them equity.
Yeah. And you hustle, you get your first project, and you don't hire ahead of what you can afford. In the beginning, I didn't know how to raise money. I tell the story, I ran my first company off my credit cards until, oops, worst way to run a company. But I didn't know where money came from. I didn't know how the world worked, which is why I spend so much time trying to, ease the journey for others. Because let's face it, if people are solving problems, then all these entrepreneurs are working 7 days a week to make my life easier. Why wouldn't we want more of them to be successful?
So back to the mindset of you don't need any more money. Do you think or believe that people who are coming up, if they believe like, hey, I don't really need money, I'm just going to solve problems, that they can be successful? Or do you feel like there's a balance there in the beginning? You got to juggle a little bit.
Oh, no, you need money. I mean, you get to a point where, the one thing that money bought that didn't exist before is what I call FU money. So when somebody says, I want you to do this project or do something, or whatever, I go, F you, I don't want to do it, right? All right. I want to spend every hour of my day the way I want to spend it. You can only sleep in one bed at a time, drive one car at a time, fly in one plane at a time. I mean, I never looked at it as a dick measuring thing. If that motivates others, great. My motivation was real simple. I had 2 sons when I was very young, and I wanted them to have a good life. So you want to talk about perseverance, you look down at them and, I'll find another way. There's always another, whatever that obstacle is, it's like playing a video game. You hit that impenetrable object and you're hammering and hammering. You finally get past it and go, yay, only to see that there's another, thing in your path. Well, that's what life is and that's what business is. So yeah, I'm not trying to say I wasn't, how do I make money focused? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But I'll give you a great example. A guy came in to me and pitched me that he had a major contract to make bullets for the US Army. And so he had a huge factory and had surplus time. So he could actually make bullets cheaper than anybody and flood the market with cheap bullets. And I'm sitting thinking, how do I get this guy out of my office without shooting me? I mean, like, great. Yes, you can make money, but is that the value you want to add to the world? I figured out how to flood the country with more cheap bullets. Early on, I in the Laserdisc days, I was brought in by a defense contractor to do some military training. And in the interview process, they said, do you have a problem teaching people how to kill? And I thought for a second. And I said, yes. And I just stood up and left. I'm like, if I don't believe in what I'm doing, how can I do it? And at some point, as you rise in your career, you're not the demographic for whom you're building the product. And that's when you have to recognize that. Reid Hoffman is probably the most successful investor, first 100 grand into Zuckerberg's hand and thousands of these. And he came to me one day with this new thing and he wanted to know if I want to put money in. And it's called Airbnb, and people stay at your house and you can stay at their house. And I'm like, I'm not letting a stranger in my house. I'm not sleeping at somebody's house. It's not about me. Okay. Right. So you fall out of the demographic,
Did you get in on that deal?
No, it made no sense to me. I missed out on a lot of them. Mm-hmm. No problem.
Was there ever a time you didn't believe?
Believe in what?
Believe in yourself. Was there ever a point like you were down and like never saw what was going to happen?
Oh, really down many times. Believe in myself. Absolutely. I mean, that's how I start off Disrupt You with this story of back when states were just getting lotteries. California was going to get the lottery. California's a big state. And lottery machines back then were a little green screen with numbers, right? And they were going to make player activated terminals where you just type in your number and you get a ticket. So using Laserdisc technology and all this other stuff, I made this kiosk. When you walk back by, a motion detector goes, psst, what would you do with $1 million? And a big display that showed you how much the thing was. And you could touch it in 8 different languages, and it talked to you and it did all this stuff. And I'm up for the state contract. It's between me and a company with the little green thing. right? And to make the prototype and all this stuff, maxed out my credit cards, flew up to Sacramento. I'm going to win this thing. They got this little stupid box with these little green things. I got the winner, okay? Like confidence beyond confidence. They gave it to the other company. Now, later I would find out that the FBI had a secret videotape that showed that the other company gave $50,000 in a suitcase to one of our state legislators, and they voted for them, and that guy went to prison, but my competitors still got to keep the contract. So I'm coming back from that meeting about as low as I can be. I am so maxed out and broke that when I landed at LAX, I could not afford a cab to get home. Now, they used to have back in decades ago, these little old ladies that sat at information booths and would tell you how to take buses because we don't really have mass transit in LA. But this is late at night. There's nobody at those things. I'm literally, next to tears. And how am I going to get home? And then it dawned on me, those little old ladies only work 8 hours a day. They only speak one language. What if you had kiosks at the airport? Imagine what you could do with those kiosks. So next time you get your plane ticket without talking to somebody, think of little old Jay. So there's always a way to pivot.
Is that? I thought that was a Jeff Hoffman. Or Jeff Hoffman?
Don't know Jeff.
Okay, I thought he came up with the.
There's a lot of people that came up with kiosks. It was a whole industry.
Kiosk in the airports.
Yeah, it was a lot of us.
What were the credit cards maxed out at, Jay? Do you remember?
I have no idea.
How did you get out of that hole? Because that's obviously, I don't know how big that hole was, but how did you climb out of that credit card hole for entrepreneurs that are going into debt? You
just eat a lot of mac and cheese and keep on going forward. You make sure you have a side hustle. You make sure you have something. One of my inventions was a coin-op video jukebox. As opposed to just hearing music, you could see music videos during the height of MTV. A lot of people didn't have cable. So, I was living off of those quarters. You do what you got to do. Elon Musk challenged himself before he started his first company. Could he live off $1 a day? And he did. And at the end of that month, he said, okay, I can always figure out a way to make $30. And his first company, he had no apartment. They had one computer, kept it on during the day, and at night the website went down while he and his brother programmed it. They went down to the YMCA to shower. And that's why he's the richest guy in the world. And when he sold, when PayPal sold, and he had the kind of money that would make generations of his family wealthy, he was broke within a year because he started 3 companies with all that money. He had to borrow from friends to just eat because he's that committed to solving the problems that obsess him. So, be glad that there are people that are obsessed with what they're trying to do. It's not a healthy way to live.
Yeah. And what's very interesting is you said you had 2 sons, right?
Yeah.
How was that doable? Raising a family? How did you manage that? Or did you see your family? Did you not see your family? Was there any sort of balance there?
It's funny nowadays during the pandemic that everybody does this, so it doesn't seem strange, but I wasn't going to pay overhead. I ran my company out of my house. Mm-hmm. Those lottery machines were in my garage. And I taught my kids at preschool that when the phone rang, we play a game. Whoever stayed quiet the longest got a treat. But yeah, you do what
Jay
you have to
invented the quiet game too.
There's this fallacy that there's this magical work-life balance. Okay. And I'd rather work harder than most people are willing to work for a few years and then be able to live the way most people aren't able to live for the rest of my life. All right. So, I really never went to a rock concert till I was, president of the world's largest music company. And it was my job. I mean, you just focus on what you got to focus on.
What? So about Jay personally, you're in Palm Springs. You live in LA. Where?
For the past 40 years, LA. And
are you married?
Yep.
Okay.
I have 2 granddaughters. One of them turned 5 yesterday.
Nice.
Oh, wow. I bet having a grandchild opens you up to like so many ideas.
Yeah, I mean, it's just pure joy. You know, the more time you can spend around people that have zero cynicism, the more enjoyable your day. And so little kids are just, they laugh all day long, you know, just as happy as could be. But, you know, my kids were always involved in my work. And, you know, when they were little, I was making video games. When they were teenagers, I was running music companies, I mean, and movie studios. And so, you know, they saw that, you know, you can do anything. And if an idiot like their dad can do it, then, you know, they can do what they want. It always pisses me off when people go to kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? As if you get one thing, right? And it's great. You know, one of my best friends had her teeth knocked out in the 3rd grade, and a dental surgeon literally gave her back her smile. So she wanted to do that for people. So she knew her calling, and she's a dental surgeon. For most of us, we don't have that. Okay. We're not lucky enough to lose our teeth. But instead of asking kids, what do you want to be? Ask them, what problem do you want to solve? Because at every stage of life, they will see inequities and injustice and things that they want to improve. When they have that mindset that they can make the world better, that changes their horizon. So even if you miss the stars, you're still one farther than the person that's just a plant and sitting there.
So where do you see everybody being in 100 years or 250 years? That's an odd question, but
oh, that's pretty
we like
easy.
odd questions, don't we?
Humanity probably will not be here
in the next 250 years.
Yeah.
What do you think? What might trigger that?
If the planet raises just 2 more degrees, life's over for mammals. You know,
it is getting hot these days.
It was funny. About 6 years ago, I keynoted a Singularity University. And one of the things was, what's going to be the biggest disruption in our lifetime? And I went at length and explained to people global pandemic. And I was like, you know, what are you talking about? Now, I didn't pull that out of my ass. Everybody knows that as we're encroaching on places that we haven't been, we're going to be exposed to things for which we have no immunity. And we keep on encroaching into everything. Now, the ineptitude of the response of governments and mankind, like, still shocks me. I just gave a speech 2 weeks ago in person for the first time in 2 years in a room of 5,000 people. And I booked that thing and said I would not back out because there was no way the pandemic was going to last 3 years. I mean, so yeah, so if we don't solve the climate crisis, the planet's going to be just fine.
Reminds me of George Carlin.
So what do you think? Where's the disruptive solution? Is it solar? Is it electric? Is it something that we haven't invented? Is it nuclear? You know, is it it's basically energy, right? Because people
energy's going to be free. Energy's getting, you know, so the amount of sunlight that hits the planet every day and the amount that we use is so minute that there's a lot of technologies that solve that. But repairing the damage of burning fossil fuels for more than a century is the issue. And planting trees is great, right? And a great way to offset, but even better, and there's a number of tech companies doing it right now in different ways, is building massive kelp forests. So that's basically underwater forests, and very easy to do. 3/4 of the planet's covered with ocean. We've killed most of what's in the ocean, so this will help bring it back. So it solves a whole bunch of stuff, and it's very inexpensive and very easy to do. So that at scale, I do believe that these things are solvable. Elon Musk doesn't. He's driven by the fact that he wants to colonize Mars.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know,
probably might be easier to resolve the issues here than colonizing Mars, right?
That would be my goal.
That's how hard both of them are.
You know, you know. But that's why the idea of, ooh, here's a business that can make you a few $1 million, just, all right. I want the planet to be a wonderful place for my grandchildren. Right. If you get a chance to go to Singapore, they have a giant terrarium that you walk through. They've got plants from all over the world or whatever. They have a cloud inside the rainforest there. But they have a 4-story thing where you walk in order and they show you what happens as each of time the planet goes up 1 degree. Because at the time they did it, we were 4 degrees away from extinction. Now we're 2 degrees. The temperatures hitting the planet this year are what we predicted would hit the planet in 2050. Mm-hmm. So we're also real bad at predicting how fast these changes are happening, because they change geometrically, not arithmetically. So when you melt the glaciers on the tundra, when you melt the permafrost off of all that land of Russia, we thought about that. What we didn't think is now all that area becomes, hotter and growing stuff and changing stuff. Mount Blanc in Switzerland, go visit this year, because that 40,000-year-old glacier is going to be gone within the next year or two. I mean,
resolving that problem, I feel like we would just end up in war, right?
Well,
like, put a ban on fossil fuels and
well, there's tons of people predicting that the future wars will be over water. I mean, there's a lot of dystopian ways to look at it. But the bigger issue is, I used to ghostwrite and work for a guy named Ralph Nader, who, in 1970 had the first Earth Day and, put solar to do a concert. I mean, solar was really primitive. Jimmy Carter put solar on the roof of the White House. Reagan took it off and threw it out. We spend more than half of our multi-trillion-dollar annual tax revenue on defense, when the thing we should be defending against is us, the change we're doing. So yeah, it amazes me that no one's doing anything. For a few years there, I was involved in some of the big charity concerts, and great, we'll do another concert to save our planet. I mean, it's hearts and minds are important, but we're now.
Well, how do you persuade the masses to move quickly, right? Because that's the hard part, right? Because it's extremely difficult.
Too often the M is silent.
The what?
The M is silent in masses.
Okay. Yeah.
You really don't need the masses. You need the will of those that are in charge. And when you can show investors, unfortunately, this is the way that we go, that there's a profitable outcome, that there's money to be made, things happen very quickly. I got involved in this very early in back in the early days with Ralph Nader. This one wasn't my idea, but it opened my eyes from the guy that did. They wanted to start a thing called recycling. No one could get recycling mandated. No one cared about recycling. Recycling went nowhere. And a guy came with a good idea. Now, back then, you young whippersnappers, a bottle of Coke was a nickel, okay? And they came up with this idea that when you buy that bottle of Coke, it's 10 cents. When you bring back the bottle, you get your nickel back. And why that was so important was they realized most people wouldn't recycle, and the soda bottlers, your Coca-Cola and your Pepsis, got to keep the nickel. So where they were making fractions of a penny of profit per sale, they were now going to make 20-fold. So now they would advertise recycling. They would lobby to force these things through legislatures. They would change everything, and they became the giant profitable businesses that they are because of that one change. So that's how you do it.
What would you say to someone who thinks they're too small to make a change?
The only people that have ever changed the world are the stubborn. I mean, everything started with one person with an idea. I mean, and I had this idea when I sold my first company that if we got the internet into classrooms, we could have equal access to knowledge and equalize the schools. There was a Supreme Court case, Brown versus the Board of Education, where separate but equal schools. So poor neighborhoods had lousy schools and rich neighborhoods had good schools. Wow, I wonder how that ends up for society. So I had this idea and I just started writing about it. And I was nobody. I had a company with 20 people. And one day I get a phone call and my assistant says, it's the president. I'm like, the president of what? And there's a guy doing a horrible Arkansas accent, and it's Bill Clinton calling little old me. Would I come to the White House and solve this? I mean, that's insane. I've worked with the Pope. I've worked, with governments all over the world. And it's not because I'm anything special. It's because I came up with solutions that people had problems that they wanted solved. No one ever hired me because they had their best year. I'm like, we've tried everything else. Let's call Samit. But there's always a way. And there's always a second chance. Walt Disney, Heinz, these guys all went bankrupt before they created their billion-dollar second companies. So you may not hit it out of the park the first time. You may not hit it out of the park the first 10 times. But there's no limit on how many times you get to try.
So how does Jay solve the climate issue?
Well, the robots are a big part of it.
What do you mean? What do you mean robots?
Our greenfield robotics that take the pesticides out of plants, what they also do is make it more affordable and more equitable to do smaller farms and automated farms. And so that you create more agriculture, which, plants will solve the problem for us. We just need more of them out there. And so that's an easy way to do it. I mean, so that's the one that I'm working on. Other people are working on kelp forests and dropping trees out of planes and tons of other crazy ideas.
Trees out of planes.
Yeah, these little tree darts to
They just
repopulate
plant
forests.
into the ground.
Mm-hmm. I mean, but go look up how many thousands of acres of rainforest are bulldozed every day so we can have cheap palm oil. I mean, it's just, it's if we just stop doing more damage.
There's the other side who just don't believe in climate change. That's the tough part, right? I mean, at least it used to be. I don't know if it's that. I don't know what's going on right now politically. It's kind of
so 100% of scientists agree.
Yeah.
Every day on the evening.
I'm not saying I disagree, but I'm
on
saying
the evening news, they tell you we're having 100-year flood, and we have it every year now. It's 106 in the UK this week. They don't have air conditioning. Okay. A friend of mine started the seed bank to save seeds of every plant, and they put them in the permafrost up by the North Pole in a place called Svalbard. And he invited me one February to go. I'm not going to the North Pole in February. I hate the cold. It was warmer in the North Pole in February than it was in Los Angeles on the day of the trip. And the permafrost melted and started to flood. We're restoring all the world's seeds. There's never been an argument on climate change, just like there was never an argument that cigarettes were bad for you. What there was a disinformation campaign to try to
like guns, right? Just like
guns. It's to give air cover to politicians so they can say, I don't know what's going on, so they can continue to take money. Yeah, we're the only country that has mass shootings, and we've had more mass shootings this year than there's been days. Right?
Yeah, that's a solution. That's a problem. I don't know how we haven't gotten solved. The UK doesn't even allow for guns, and they have and that's a good comparable country to ours. And I know their crime rate is much lower.
Yeah, no, I mean, it takes the will. And, we did have an assault weapons ban during the Clinton administration. And with a ton of lobbying, they lobbied that it had to be renewed every so many years. Can you imagine if when after the Civil War, we said you can't have slaves, they said, yeah, for the next 5 years, it has to be renewed. I mean, like, it's out of control. Lobbyists always have the last way in. And big oil is no longer the big lobbyists. When I worked in DC, they were the major lobbyists. Now it's big tech, it's, information and the power of that information. And, I probably have a different view of privacy than you guys. I don't think anything should be private. And I've testified in the EU on that, and got the French guy like, you crazy American. I said, no. Chinese,
if you have nothing to hide, what does it matter, right?
No, it's not even that. The Chinese will outlive you.
What do you mean?
Everybody's genome, everybody, what happens to them with disease, what drug works. The whole country is participating in essence with their data, so you can solve diseases and make stuff happen. If all your medical research, if everything that happens to you is kept private and we can't learn from it, how does society benefit? So, there's different ways to look at every issue. You didn't think we'd be this philosophical on a business show today.
You're taking such a high level perspective. I wanted to go there, but at the same time, people just want to make their nut. You know what I mean? So it's a hard balancing act, because it comes down to quality of life, like you said, with your family. But
did you come out of reading Disrupt You energized to go start something?
You know what?
Be honest.
You know what intrigued me most was your insight into the way you perceived equity inside of companies, the way you were able to take a different perspective on that I'd never seen before in creating, I think you mentioned it earlier, basically creating money that wasn't there before.
Right.
And I was like, man, that is crazy to think of it that way. And it's more of a wholesome and better approach than I think that I've ever heard. Well, so it's like printing money, basically.
Well, we created our educational system to create employees, right?
Yeah, it's another broken system.
And now we don't have those jobs. Half of all jobs will disappear over the next decade. Think of what that impact will be in the US. Okay. If you think we have consolidation of wealth during the pandemic, the 100 wealthiest people on earth doubled their net worth. Let that sink in for a second. Not doubled what they made in a year, doubled their net worth.
By doing nothing.
Well, by having, economic power.
Yeah.
So our educational system doesn't tell people that there's another way. I mean, the great example is, the boss drives up in his brand new Lamborghini and the young employee sees him and he's staring at him. And the boss goes, "You like that car?" And he goes, "Yeah. If you work really hard this year, I'll be able to buy another one." So you either work for making someone else's dreams come true or you work to make your dreams come true. I don't believe in reincarnation, so I think I'll pick on making my dreams come true. And, you're going to learn that it's hard, but it's not impossible. There are people that want to help. There are organizations that will help. There's no shortage of capital. There's no gatekeepers blocking the capital. People with higher IQs don't earn more. People with better grades don't end up becoming wealthy. Those are all myths. And that's one of the reasons why with future-proofing you, I wanted to take somebody that had less advantage than most people reading the book. And probably the most rewarding part of writing these two books that I didn't anticipate was what I call love letters. I get emails every day I've now gotten from over 140 countries, of somebody telling me the story of how they read the book and now they changed their life and da-da-da. And that propels me to spend the time to do this. Because we all have that potential. And we have enough untapped potential to solve any problems that we're facing. And why we don't want people to reach their potential is beyond me.
So you took a homeless guy and he became a millionaire inside, I think it was a year, right? It's been a while since I read the book. But what habits did he change, or what habits did I always felt like morning routines. If you could take a homeless guy and give him a morning routine, he's going to be productive the rest of the day. But what maybe you did that, but what other, I can't remember the habits.
Yeah. So there's a lot of there's some TED talk that the most important thing you do is make your bed. I mean, I don't focus on any of the gimmicks. It was quite simply, first I had to change his mindset, and I had to do it quickly. And the way I did that was I lied to him. There's a psychological principle called the Pygmalion effect. Professor went to school, tested all the kids, told the teachers 3 of the students were super learners, super achievers. They excelled that year. And at the end of the year, those 3 kids excelled, but the professor lied. He just picked 3 names out of a hat.
So I should do this with my kids.
If you tell somebody they're special and you treat them special, they become special. So I told Vin, the young man, that I interviewed over 100 candidates, and out of all of them, he was the only one that had all the attributes to be a self-made millionaire. And he figured if this old successful guy saw something, he must be right. And in fact, I didn't cherry pick. I just picked one guy and said I had to go work with that guy. The second thing that kept the mindset going was in the first month. I don't remember. I haven't memorized my own book, but he did like almost $70,000 his first month. He could have flown to Europe without a plane. I mean, he was so motivated and pumped up.
So how did he get to 70? How did he do that?
So then I'll tell you, my task was how do you keep that level of motivation?
Yeah.
Because he had to go 7 days a week, no dating, no watching TV, no going to the bar, no going to the disco, no going to the game, no raves. Daytimes were for selling, nighttime was for doing the work and keep it going. And when he hit it at 11 months, spoiler alert, I'm like, can I keep him motivated for another month? And what kept him going at that point is the only thing that kept him going once he knew that he was on that thing was he was then going to take the next couple of years off. Not because $1 million is enough to live your life, but because he knew he was future-proof, that he could drop down anywhere, anytime, and do it again. And so he had booked all his travel and everything for after the year. So that kept him going that last month. How did he do it? He wanted to do social media marketing. Wow. Never heard anybody doing that. There's 1 million people doing it. All right.
This guy learned it from nothing. How did he?
No, there's nothing unique about that. You won't make any money. Coca-Cola isn't going to hire a homeless guy to do their marketing. Okay. But one of my 12 truths is fill a void. So focus on doing social media marketing for something that no one else is focused on. And look at what was in the zeitgeist. What was everybody talking about? What's some area? And if you market yourself as the social media expert for that one thing.
What did he market as? What area?
Well, this was the year that Bitcoin went from 1,000 to 20,000. And so everybody was coming out with all the initial coin offerings of thousands of other coins. So social media marketing for crypto, for ICOs. And so he went from not being able to find clients to finding clients that will pay him tens of thousands of dollars a month.
Talk about the perfect storm.
Well, but that perfect storm exists every year.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Where is it now?
Look at what people are talking about. Look at what changes are happening. I mean, when I launched my company at 21, I had to hire engineers that knew how to code and do all kinds of stuff. And it was, the PC was catching on and all this stuff. A friend of mine, Billy, he said, well, people are buying a PC for $2,000. Now, back then, a car was about $2,000. So, this was a big investment for somebody. If you're going to have something that expensive in your house, you're going to want a dust cover.
Yeah.
So he made a plastic dust cover to put over the thing. And he made millions. Mm-hmm. And then when floppies came out, he made a little thing to hold your floppies out of plastic. When mouse came out, he made a little mouse pad, right? You don't need any engineers to sell a ton of it. And his company was bought by Rubbermaid for hundreds of millions of dollars back in the 1980s. Okay. Insane. Fast forward to the iPhone comes out. It takes billions of dollars in genius skills to make an iPhone, right? Think of all the pieces, all the, it's witchcraft. Okay. Mm-hmm. But to make a little nickel piece of plastic that you put your phone into that you sell for $40, That's a $65 billion a year market, mobile phone accessories. And a couple of years ago, somebody figured out a new void in the market. They're looking at Instagram, and in the top 4 most seen thing on Instagram are people showing the dog smiling. Well, getting your dog to smile at the camera is a challenge. So Paw Champs made a little thing that holds a dog treat on the end of the phone, so your dog goes, ah, and made millions. It really is that easy.
So you've been taking a higher level perspective on a lot of things, helping the planet. But what made you want to help a homeless guy do social media? Like what made you want to do that?
So as I said, I got
monetary and short,
I got all these emails from the first book. I didn't plan on writing a second book, and but I got this one email one day that said, "This is all great, but I could never do it," and that just ate at me. And it was from a millennial. I'm not picking on the generation. I have raised 2 millennials.
So you were more interested in the psychology.
And I was like, maybe there's something in the way I'm communicating for my generation that I'm failing to communicate. And so I thought it would be a challenge. Could I just play my own version of My Fair Lady or Pygmalion? Could I just pluck somebody out and do this? And it was an insane idea. And
did you think it would work?
Well, I wouldn't have done it if I didn't think it would work.
Well, you wouldn't have told anybody.
But I don't know if you know who Tom Bilyeu is. Tom has a great podcast. So I went to Tom. I said, Tom, let's film these sessions every week. And then, when this thing comes out, then you can air them and you have this hit show. And we filmed the first one, and he came to me afterward and goes, this kid's not going to do it.
Right. How old was he? How old was he?
He was in his 20s.
Okay.
Like, not going to happen, Jay. And, Vin did all the work, and I didn't give him any business contacts. I didn't give him any capital. I didn't, there was no cheating.
So what did your one call a week look like? Like what, it was a call or a face-to-face or?
Combination. I did buy him a few pizzas.
Okay.
He had a very limited diet. Skinny guy and only ate pizza. I would die for that.
Simple.
But I would challenge what he was planning to do if I thought it didn't make sense. But this wasn't daddy going, no, don't do this. This was, like one of the things he wanted to do, he wanted to name his company after him. And I'm like, yeah, that makes it hard to sell. Yeah, but I wanted to, when I finally was able to, find a common ground of, Richard Branson,
What do you name it?
World's Greatest Marketing, I think was the name of it. But Virgin was a genius brand because Virgin means you don't know what you're doing. And so there's been over 300 Virgin companies: Virgin Games, Virgin Stores, Virgin Books, Virgin Brides. Oh, it's bridal dresses. Most of them failed, but 8 of them became billion-dollar companies. It's just that desire to do it. I mean, Richard took his girlfriend down to the Bahamas, and his flight back got canceled, and everybody's sitting around with nothing. So he found out what it costs. He's 29 years old, a music guy. Found out what it cost to charter a plane, took a piece of cardboard out of the trash, wrote Virgin Airlines $39, and figured out how he and his girlfriend could fly home for free. And in his mind, it's that easy to start an airline. That's how he started Virgin. He only had a few planes. You wouldn't know that because he made the brand so fantastic.
And he also started a war with one of the
airlines, right? He did the same with Virgin Trains. Yeah, I mean, but
that helped drive him.
That's free marketing.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a genius, innate marketer.
If I said, Jay, hey, how much capital could you raise in 30 minutes?
In 30 minutes. How good's the idea?
Let's say it was no idea. It's just bet on Jay.
I wouldn't do that.
No,
I wouldn't do that. I mean, there's no amount of capital that can't be raised. Capital has, in the beginning of my career, a different story, but at this stage, capital isn't the issue. What people invest in is the team and the inkling of a premise, because most businesses pivot. So you don't even need a great premise. You need to be at least pointed in a jungle that seems like there might be something in that jungle. And
So
then look at the data.
Do you still mentor people who are monetary based, or are you just mentoring for solutions that help the planet or,
So I tried this past year. I set up a group on Facebook of people from around the world to try to take 1,000 people on the same journey as Vin. And what you quickly realized is most people don't want to put in the work. And you went from 1,000 to 450 in the first week. You get down to 30 by the end of the first month. I mean, it was really, if you talk to anybody that and this is all, I'm doing this for free. If you talk to anybody that has online courses, less than 5% finish the course. If it's a multi, it's just, people just aren't that persistent, which is why I put that up at the top. It's not brains. It's a lot of bright people doing nothing with their lives. And that's where the passion comes in. If there's some problem that you're really passionate about solving, you will solve it.
You got any books on the way coming out? Or are you done writing?
I wrote and illustrated a kid's book, which may be coming out. It's something I wrote years ago and just finally had the time to do all the painting.
Yeah. I saw you do a lot of watercolor.
Yeah.
Saw you do.
My version of meditation.
Yeah. So you don't meditate?
No, my mind's too active. But watercolor, of all the painting mediums, you only have the few seconds where the paper's wet and you don't get to paint over. Once it touches, that's it. So it's complete concentration. So it allows me to relax and not use the other parts of my brain. And back to anything can happen. When the pandemic happened and I knew I was going to be locked in, I thought maybe it would be a month, 2, 3 months. I decided to say I would paint and put up a painting a day, not for any purpose other than to show that this is a gift of time and we can all do something with this time to make it positive, assuming you didn't get sick and lose loved ones and that type of stuff. And what happened by just putting that out into the ether is I heard from galleries, I heard from art agents. I signed with a gallery in New York. I had a solo show, which I didn't get to attend. And my art is now collected. I mean, this is insane to me. I would have never had the self-confidence or belief that, I can be an artist.
Persevere is the name of the game, and have good ideas.
Yeah, I like what's the writer that always says come up with 10 ideas a day. That would be terrible. From the James Altucher. Yeah, Altucher. And then keep doing that every day. But
well, Joe, this was awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on.
Fantastic. Keep doing what you're doing.
We value that you took time out of your day to spend it with us and that we're going to share this with everyone to listen.
Yeah,
is there anything that you want people to do to take action on after listening to all the wisdom that you provided today?
Yeah, if you made it this far into this, then you're serious. I have free workbooks on my website. I don't sell anything. I'm not trying to.
What's your website?
My name, jaysamit.com, JAYSAMIT.com. So if you're reading Disrupt You or Future Proofing You, there's a lot of good information, but sometimes when you're reading, it goes in one ear, out the other. The workbooks have exercises to do after each chapter to help you plan out your life or plan out your business. And so you can just click and download them for free. It was interesting. I heard from a teacher, why don't I do a version of this for high school kids so they can understand that there's a third choice between would you like fries with this and going to prison? And so the teacher worked with me, and she won Teacher of the Year for creating this course. And then I twisted HP's arm to print all these to give to Boys and Girls Clubs. So it's never too young to let people, if you're ever driving and you see that kid with the lemonade stand, stop your car, give the kid $5. What else can you do with $5 that can change the trajectory of a life? Right?
Not much, even $1.
Yeah.
Give them some optimism and some hope.
So I'm there to do it. And I look forward to seeing the solutions people create.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank you. Thank
We
you,
look
Jack.
forward to seeing the solutions. Peace out.